everybody and welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to do something similar to what I did recently with the Second Sight Dawn of the Dead box set. If you've seen that video you'll know that I sort of go in depth as to what the box set contains, go through the different versions of the film, the extras, and basically just air my thoughts on the box set itself, which I really enjoyed doing. It was such a fantastic set to explore. And props to Second Sight for doing such a great job on that one. Really enjoyed the video. So I thought I'd do it again with another box set that I was really eager to get my hands on. I pre-ordered it as soon as it was announced. I think it feels like it was this year. What are we in now? May? I think it was announced this year. It may have been late last year. But anyway, pre-ordered it when it was announced. Paid £120, I want to say, which is a lot of money, but that does include international shipping, which is always a nightmare, as you know, if you're not where your box sets are coming from. So you have to pay for the shipping. Not great, but the set we're going to talk about is The Dungeon of Andy Milligan by Severin Films.
Look at me, hon. I'm no prize package.
Now, this is a really interesting box set because it almost feels like it shouldn't exist. And I'm aware that's a really weird thing to say, but if you're aware of Andy Milligan and the sort of filmmaker that he was, it does seem bizarre that his movies would get treatment like this because, obviously, I mean, Severin Films are known for their fantastic box sets. Obviously, they did the Al Adamson box set as well. But if, as I say, I was aware of Andy Milligan through my viewing of the Ghastly Ones, which was included on the Video Nasties list, and at the time I remember being very harsh on that movie, and a lot of people are very harsh on Milligan in general. He's not got the best reputation when it comes to making quality movies. That's not, I'd scarcely say that's an opinion, that's just pretty much fact. A lot of people are aware of the quality of Milligan's movies, very low budget, very gritty, very grimy sort of movies. And as I said, that's why it was quite a shock to some people to see that a box set of his stuff was being released like this. But it is here. We have in this box set, I think, 14 of his movies from the most prolific time of his career, which was sort of the late 60s to early 80s. He did sort of theatre work beforehand and a couple of things after that, but that was his main bulk of his work was released in that time. I have now seen all the films and read all the extras and everything. I wanted to do that before I made this video to make sure that I was fully educated on what I was talking about. And yeah, we're just going to crack on, I think. We're going to go through the set. I'll let you know my thoughts on the films, on the extras, etc. And then I'll give my verdict at the end. So, let's start with the artwork. In fact, no, let's start with the fact that the box that it came in contained two lovely stickers. We've got an Intervision sticker and a Severin sticker. Not stuck them anywhere yet though, but I will find somewhere for them eventually. Now, let's get on to the artwork. So, the front cover I really do like. It is, as you can see now, it's very reminiscent of a VHS box. In fact, the Severin Films logo is somewhat parodying, is it Midnight Video, Midnight Films? I think that was the label that put out a lot of his movies on VHS at the time. It's a similar sort of logo in a similar sort of place on the box, which is a really nice touch. Obviously it says Severin Films and it's got the logo there. Now, the artwork itself, it seems to capture exactly what Andy Milligan's films and Andy Milligan's posters and things were like. It's very over the top, very garish. As you'll see when we get into the set, the posters and everything were very over the top, a lot of the time to mask the fact that the films weren't the greatest, but they needed to get people in the seats, so they made very alluring ad campaigns, we'll put it that way. So yeah, we've got a bright yellow front cover. The title there, Dungeon of Andy Milligan, that is, I believe, it's actually taken from The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here, that logo, that weird sort of squiggly thing. It says there, including The Ghastly Ones, Legacy of Blood, Bloodthirsty Butchers, Carnage, plus 10 additional movies, all new special features, and more. I'm trying to hold this up so you can see it, the light's a little bit awkward in here. And then we've got a few cutouts from the posters down the bottom there. So yeah, really like the front cover on this, really very appropriate. The spine, again, really enjoy it. It's more of the same, really. You've got his picture down the bottom there. Particularly like it says, storage case included, which again, very reminiscent of a VHS box. And you've got the title there, The Dungeon of Andy Milligan. Can't quite tell which way around is the right way. There it is. On the back, we have a lot of writing. So I'm going to read this to you. We've got a quote from Variety. It says, "Perversely arresting, Andy Milligan was one of the most extreme characters in exploitation cinema's lurid annals." Again, very very over the top, but true. We've got a couple of screenshots there. I believe that's from Bloodthirsty Butchers. That is from Carnage, with the quote, "If you don't have the guts, stay away." And then we have all of the films that are included. So, in this set, I think, as it said, there were 14 movies. That may not include, there's a couple of these have different cuts that may or may not include these, but we'll see. So, we have the Ghastly Ones, we have The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here. We also have the alternate cut of that called The Curse of the Full Moon. We have Vapours, we have The Body Beneath, Torture Dungeon, Nightbirds, The Man with Two Heads, Guru the Mad Monk, Legacy of Blood, also contains Legacy of Horror, which is the TV cut of that movie, Bloodthirsty Butchers, Seeds, Carnage, Fleshpot on 42nd Street, and Blood. I think that's all of them. I know there's one of his lost films, there's 20 minutes of footage from that on here, although obviously that's not the full product. And then I think there is also a film he made in the late 80s called Toga Party, which is included in here. I will be absolutely honest, that is not one of the ones I've watched because it's not really the sort of thing that people would buy this box set for. I think it's more of a comedy, but yeah, not one of his better known pieces. And then we've got a little blurb on the back. Again, I shall read that to you now. So, he's been described as the Fassbender of 42nd Street, a celebration of hate and an unmatched voice from the underbelly of low-budget cinema. More than a quarter of a century after his death, he remains perhaps the most divisive name in genre history. Severin Films now presents the cranium-cleaving collection devoted to this writer, director and actor Andy Milligan, a gay sadist who pioneered New York's avant-garde theatre world and made astonishingly unique exploitation movies. On 8 Blu-rays featuring 14 surviving films from his New York and London years, 10 plus hours of trailers, outtakes, interviews and audio commentaries, a bonus CD and an all-new 128-page booklet by Stephen Thrower that explores the profane madness behind it all. From his provocative underground work through his international scuzz horror classics, experience the venomous legacy from the filmmaker Time magazine calls depraved, degenerate, desperate, damned like never before. I love that. That's such a fantastic write-up of this, because that's exactly what it was. He was a very interesting figure, made very interesting movies. On the top there, we've got just more of the same logos. On the bottom, we have more of the same and a rat, which is lovely. So, inside the set itself, there are 2 things. We'll get to this in a second. So, the movies come in one of these. I'm not a big fan of these, I have to be honest. A lot of people have said the same thing, you know, where it's sort of the discs are in pages like a book. I've got an Alfred Hitchcock box set, which is the same. I believe the Al Adamson box set was the same. I get it, you know, if you're going to include a set with a lot of discs, this is a very economic and like compact way of doing it, I suppose. It does just feel a little bit flimsy. I'm sure it's not. It just feels that, you know, you've spent money on it, you don't want to break it. But yeah, all of the films are contained in here. On the front, we have a picture of Andy Milligan behind the camera. Again, we've got more of the logos there. And then this fantastic collage on the back. An unbelievable orgy of terror, sadistic suspense, spine-chilling. Yeah, just bits and pieces from all of his posters. And then, as I say, the movies are inside. We'll do the movies first, then we'll talk about the Stephen Thrower book. So, I can't open these very far. This is the only thing. If you look there, can you see where it's sort of bending a little bit? It means you can't really open the pages as far as you might want to. But I'm going to try and show this off as best as I can. So the first film in the set is The Ghastly Ones. This is potentially his most famous movie, I want to say, maybe just because it was featured on the Video Nasties list. It's the story of 3 sisters who have to go and collect their father's inheritance, but they have to spend 3 nights in marital harmony or something like that at this estate. And gruesome deaths start happening, as would happen in films involving inheritance. It is, I mean, it's as good a place to start as any, I think, with Andy Milligan's films. So I'm trying to make sure you can see that. I'm going to say this a lot, very rough around the edges, dialogue, audio, very muddled, often like warped sound. You know, you can hear the music going whoa, whoa, whoa. The film stock, very low quality. I mean, it looks fantastic on here, as all these movies do, but if you were watching his films before this box set, you were likely struggling to see what was going on, partly because of the film stock being so cheap and so grainy. But yeah, it's just another one of those times where that sort of adds to the film in a way. It's the same way that a lot of people enjoy watching horror films on VHS because of the screen crackle, you know, it gives it a sort of atmosphere. Yeah, it seems a bit redundant to say that this is technically a very poor film, because let's be honest, pretty much all films are. But it's technically poor. Is it enjoyable? It is enjoyable if you are willing to give it what it needs. You know, it's one of those where your enjoyment is based very much on how much you let it get away with, which I think is fair to say, again, for most of the films in this set. It's not particularly gruesome. It has a couple of quite nasty bits in it, particularly there's a bit with a pitchfork and a bit with a hacksaw. They're quite nasty, but again, lots of camera shake. Transfers on here are very clear, but at the time, it would have been very difficult to see what was going on. A lot of it's quite dark. How it ended up on the Video Nasties list, I do not know. I do love that poster though. So again, so over the top, you know. Mad creatures of the night existing only for sensual sadistic moments of human slaughter. A Jer Pictures presentation directed by Andrew Milligan in cranium cleaving colour. Yeah, so on every one of these you get sort of cast members directed by at the top there, obviously Andy Milligan, and then you get some details down at the bottom there. So 72 minutes. You'll find that a lot of these films very short, so even if they aren't up to standard, that seems again a bit redundant to say, most of them are short enough to let it get away with. You've got your aspect ratio obviously in colour with mono audio. Special features. Now this is the film that has the most special features on here, again possibly because it's the most well known. I'm willing to let it get away with not having many special features purely because a lot of the films in here are so obscure that I imagine a lot of people involved are no longer with us or are very hard to track down, maybe don't want to talk about them. And information is quite scarce on a lot of these, I would imagine. But special features for Ghastly Ones, we have an audio commentary with Hal Borsk, the actor and filmmaker Frank Henenlotter. We've got another audio commentary with Cinephilia.com's Keith Crocker. We've got a partial audio commentary with Fred Olin Ray. We've got an alternate title sequence with the title Blood Rights, which is how I believe it appeared on the Video Nasties list, if that was the UK title. We've got Ghastly and Depraved, an interview with marketing whiz Samuel M. Sherman. We've got a trailer for the Lost Milligan film Depraved. That's what I was thinking of before. The Lost Reel is from a film called The Filthy Five, which is also on this disc. And then Talk of the Trade, interview with early Milligan actress Natalie Rogers. So yeah, for an obscure film, that's quite a plethora of special features there. You've got 2.5 audio commentaries. So yeah, if you're going to start with this set, I did it. I mean, this is the only one I'd seen at the start, but I watched it again when I got the set. You might as well go through in order. Frankly, that's what I did. They're not in date order. I think there's a lot of these put together if they were on double bills with each other. But yeah, I'm just going to go through in order. This is the order I watched them in as well. So that's the Ghastly Ones. Good a place to start as any. From here on out, you get 2 films per disc. So the next film in the set, bloody lighting, is Nightbirds, which was, let me just have a check, released in 1970. The compelling story of 2 young alives facing a moral self-destruction they dare not admit. So this isn't a horror film, this is more of a drama. It was, I think, was it one of the first he made, if not the first in London? He started in America. I think The Ghastly Ones is an American production. Moved to London for a bit, did a few films there, and then moved back. This has Beric Kayler in it, who is quite a prolific actor through a lot of Milligan's films. I think he's in most of them. And it's basically a gritty, low-budget, black and white drama romance between these 2 sort of social misfits. This girl finds the lad out on the street and she sort of invites him back and they end up living together. And as you'd expect with Milligan, it's not straightforward by any means. It all gets a little bit twisted. And again, I enjoyed it for what it was. You know, it's not... Admittedly, I bought this set for the horror film, so it's not likely I'm going to watch Nightbirds again. And I sort of went into it thinking, oh, you know, we've got like a black and white, low-budget drama as the second film. This isn't going to do me any favours. But I didn't not like it. You know, it was a solid sort of 5 or 6 out of 10, I'd say. Kept my interest through the runtime. Admittedly, again, 77 minutes, not much interest to keep hold of. Yeah, black and white again in English mono. X-certificate, as a lot of his films were. And then again, here we see the sort of dip in special features. We've only got the 2 on here, one of which is a trailer. The other one is an audio commentary with Beric Kayler and Stephen Thrower, who is the author of the booklet that comes with it. Also quite prolific with other releases. He did the American horror project as well with Arrow. Next film in the set, this is one I was really intrigued to see. A lot of people say this is his best movie. This is The Body Beneath. It's a sort of twisted vampire story. Trying to remember details. I vaguely remember there is a group of vampires living in and around Highgate Cemetery, but they are having to move elsewhere because people are becoming suspicious. And I'm sure is it Susan Hurd who's in this? I don't think it is Susan Hurd. Who is the main actress? She's of interest anyway to these vampires, and they sort of kidnap her and keep her held hostage as all of these shenanigans are going on. Very bizarre little movie. I can see why people think this is his best. It's, by any other standard, again, very poor technically, but it does have a narrative flaw to it that is lacking in a lot of the other films in this set, in that it feels like, I don't want to sound like I'm being critical, but it feels like more thought has gone into the sequencing of this film. It feels like it flows a lot better than the other films in this set. The acting in this film as well. To be fair, all of them, as much as the acting is over the top and the dialogue is very heavy a lot of the time, the acting is pretty decent, really. A lot of the people in the films were stage actors, so they're used to sort of hamming it up, especially in the Ghastly Ones. That's a criticism that film often faces. But particularly in this, I noticed the acting was pretty spot on. Over the top where it needed to be over the top, and, you know, the dialogue, it's very convoluted. There's a lot of talking in these films, often because they didn't have the budget to show anything too flashy, so they had to pad it out with a lot of talking. But particularly the vicar is he the vicar? No, he's not a vicar, is he? He's a vampire. I'm just thinking because he's dressed like as you can see there, like a reverend. Yeah, what's his name? Gavin Reed. Went on to do a Carry On film straight after this, which I find really funny. His performance in particular in this is really, really quite good, I think. And again, Beric Kayler's in this one. Sexually rampant ghouls, depraved souls, and blood-red roses. The Body Beneath in bone-chilling colour. So this one's 82 minutes, and it has a trailer and an audio commentary with film scholar Vic Pratt and Will Fowler. I have to be honest, I haven't actually listened to that commentary yet, but I'm intrigued to see what people say about it, because, like I say, a lot of people consider it to be his best. I can sort of see why. And again, it's the first film in this set. I think the Ghastly One sort of does it, but this in particular shows off how outlandish his films got. Like, there's a group of 3 women in this film who are just painted blue. You don't really get an explanation as to who they are or why they're there, but they're working for this lead vampire. And do you know, there's a moment in Highgate Cemetery at the very start of the film which is genuinely quite creepy. It's, again, that soundtrack, it doesn't sound intentional, but the soundtrack does like a little bit of a wobble, and it just is really creepy. I'll play it now. You can sort of get what I mean. It's that vibe all the way through it, where it doesn't feel real. It's a bit like a fever dream sort of movie. But yeah, The Body Beneath, really, really enjoyed this one. So yeah, that's probably my favourite of the set so far. Moving on. This one, is another one I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did. This is Torture Dungeon. I can't open it any further than that. See, it's sort of bending and I don't want to break it. Yes, so Torture Dungeon, from what I remember, because I watched them all quite close together, so I'm trying not to get them muddled. Torture Dungeon is about this sort of sadistic person who is in line to be, is it the king or a prince? Or I think is he a prince and he's wanting to be a king? But people are obviously in his family standing in his way, and he wants to dispatch them all in increasingly sadistic and nasty ways in order to gain power. Again, we've got Hal Borsk in this one. And we've got, is Beric Kayler in this one? I genuinely can't remember. I think he is in this one. An Unbelievable Orgy of Terror, that's where that thing across the top comes from. Again, love all this. The lucky victims of the torture dungeon died in their sleep in dripping blood colour. Yeah, again, very over the top poster there. Lucky victims of the torture dungeon died in their sleep. Again, special features, we've got an audio commentary with Milligan historian Alex DeSanto and a trailer, so quite slim on them, but as I say, quite an obscure movie to get special features on, so I'm more than happy to accept that. Again, this is another one like The Body Beneath that stands out to me. The Ghastly Ones, I can sort of let go because it's a video nasty and it's sort of well known. Putting that to one side though, in terms of enjoyment, Body Beneath and Torture Dungeon are probably up there with two of my favourites in this set. Really enjoyed it. Again, very outlandish. Costume design in this one in particular, I know Andy Milligan designed a lot of his own costumes, was very inspired by theatre, so the costumes are ridiculous in this, but it absolutely works for the vibe of the movie. Acting again, very over the top. We've got some, particularly actually in Torture Dungeon, some very bizarre characters who are acted appropriately over the top, which is lovely to see. And I get the feeling that this was on a double bill. I think this double bill was mentioned in Fleshpot on 42nd Street, if I remember rightly, when she wants to go to the cinema and she asks what's playing. So yeah, the other side of this double bill is Bloodthirsty Butchers. Great poster, great title as well. Their prime cuts were curiously erotic, but thoroughly brutal. Sadism was just an appetizer for the bloodthirsty butchers. How can you not love that? Again, we've got Beric Kayler in this one. This is a retelling of... what's his name? The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. I've totally forgotten his name. But yeah, it's... people are getting killed and put into pies and things like that. There's a lot more going on in this one than that, but that's basically, it's a retelling of that story. And honestly, this is probably the film I liked least from this set. It's the one that scored the lowest on IMDb. Kind of a good reason why. Everything about Milligan's films that people consider to be bad is probably at its worst with this one. It's very choppy, it's very all over the place. As I say, there was a narrative flow with The Body Beneath and Torture Dungeon. It sort of lacks in this one, where you don't really know where the next scene is coming from. And even when it does arrive, you think, what's the connection with this and the last thing? And then it tries to tie it together at the end, but it's a bit too late by that point. Still worthwhile though if you're a Milligan fan. It's got the obvious gore in this one. They're all quite gory films anyway, but yeah, Bloodthirsty Butchers, it's going to be gory. We've got, Torture Dungeon was 80 minutes, this one is 79. And all the special features on this one is just a trailer, unfortunately, so there's not even a commentary with this one. Again, I'll let it off though. So that is, again, I was going to say it's 1970, Torture Dungeon 1970, Body Beneath 1970, Nightbirds 1970. You get the idea of how quick these films were being made. Ghastly Ones was 68. The next page is 1971. Now this is the first instance of a film being in the set twice, because it was initially conceived as The Curse of the Full Moon, later to be changed into The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here. So, The Curse of the Full Moon was a story about a family of werewolves, and the runtime on that was 73 minutes, so he was asked to pad it up to feature-length runtime by a distributor. He changed it into The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here. He added in a few extra scenes involving flesh-eating rats. Doesn't really add much to the story. Also, there is quite a nasty animal cruelty scene in this, featuring a mouse, which I've no desire to see again. So, if I was to watch this film, I'd go with the original cut, The Curse of the Full Moon. The rats thing doesn't really add much to the story. It is pretty much all about the werewolves in this one. Again, probably one of my favourites from the set, with Torture Dungeon and Body Beneath. I watched this version, but from now on I'll be watching this version. I only watched this one because it was the longest cut. Rats Are Coming is 91 minutes. That's surprisingly long for a Milligan film. Curse of the Full Moon, 73. So it's just under 20 minutes of additional footage that doesn't really go anywhere. Obviously the cast is the same on both of these because it's essentially the same film. Special features. For Curse of the Full Moon, there's a couple of audio options if you want the audio from Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here, or if you want the Curse audio. Then we've got The World of Andy Milligan, which is a locations featurette narrated by Temple of Schlock's Chris Poggiali. I hope I'm saying his name right. And you've got a trailer there as well, which is nice. Probably, again, one of his more famous movies. I know a lot of people say they've seen this one, and if they haven't seen it, they know the title. The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here is up there with the best movie titles ever, so I don't see why you wouldn't know that one. Yeah, not many rats, not really many werewolves, but quite gripping actually. For a film that's very dialogue heavy, I did quite enjoy it. So that's a recommendation from me. Next up we have, I know it was a double bill, because these are, again, sort of the years are a bit mixed up. This is 71, this is back to 70, but they're together in the set because they were released as a double bill at the time. So the first film is The Man with Two Heads from 1971. There is no man with two heads in it. It's a Jekyll and Hyde story. So he doesn't physically have two heads, he has two personalities. But that doesn't sound as good on a poster, does it? Not as good as knife-slashing tortures, so terrifying she will hold you and hold you and hold you, shudder in the house of degradation, the man with two heads, flesh-curdling experiments, sadistic suffering. In gory colour, obviously. Yeah, that's kind of the poster that comes to mind when I see that. You know, you can sort of see the red and yellow contrast. Looks great. All the artwork on his posters was always really eye-catching and good. Now, The Man with Two Heads, again, Beric Kayler's in this one. He was in Rats Are Coming as well. This was middle of the road for me. This is a film that had a lot of merit, you know, in context of Andy Milligan, it had a lot of merit. But it doesn't particularly stand out in the mind. I remember enjoying it when I watched it, but as far as the other films are concerned, I'd rather revisit those than this one. It was probably one of the nastier films, I'd say. It was a lot of his films are mean-spirited, but this one in particular was really quite nasty, which I'm normally a fan of. In this case, though, I feel like this could have been done a little bit better. The runtime's 89 minutes, so again, you've got that quality control thing and a runtime that's feature length, so it doesn't quite mix. If it had been cut down maybe by 10-15 minutes, it would have been a bit more palatable. But by all means, it's an enjoyable film for if you're in the mood. I probably will revisit this one again. Special features, we've got an alternate party sequence, which I'm assuming is something that was shot for the film but never included in it. And again, we've got a trailer. Now, Guru the Mad Monk, this was very much made as second fiddle to The Man with Two Heads because the runtime on this is only 56 minutes, so it's less than an hour long. And for that reason, you can sort of let it get away with anything because it's only on for an hour. And I enjoyed it for what it was. Again, it's sort of similar to this, where I've not got much desire to revisit this one, but at the time I watched it and I thought, yeah, you know, it's another Andy Milligan film. It's not completely a waste of time. So this one is about, what is this one about? See what I mean? It was like an hour long and I watched it really late at night. I mean, there is a mad monk called Guru and he is quite sadistic. I'll be absolutely honest, I vaguely remember him taking someone captive. I genuinely cannot remember the reason for him being sadistic. There is a reason behind it. He's keeping people at his, is it a monastery or a church? He's keeping people there and he's, I think he has like a confession thing going on where he'll, you know, if people have sinned, he'll correct them by, you know, doing these horrible things to them. I think a couple of people get branded and someone might get their hand cut off. Yeah, it's one of those sort of stories. It's very narrative, put my teeth in. It's not very narratively in-depth, you know, it sort of has a plot that there's a mad monk called Guru and he does very nasty things, but that's about as deep as it goes. Great poster on this one, a gory tale of terror, death his religion, blood his lust. In blood-dripping colour, obviously. As I say, 56 minutes. We've got an audio commentary with Cinephire's Keith Crocker. We've got a featurette called Remembering Andy Milligan, which is an interview with set photographer Tom Vozza, and we have a trailer. So yeah, these two played together. This was the A picture, this was the B picture. You can sort of see why this is maybe slightly better than this one, but yeah. Both of these are passable, but not neither of them are my favourites in the set. Next page, we have, again, another instance of this kind of being the same film, actually. So we've got Legacy of Blood, which is Andy Milligan's original film, and then we have Legacy of Horror, which was the TV cut, which has more dialogue and less gore. So I obviously watched this one. Who needs that? We want gore from an Andy Milligan film. This is an exact retelling of the Ghastly Ones. Like, pretty much, it's not line for line, but it's three sisters, inheritance, go, shag each other, deaths, inheritance, money, yeah, that sort of thing. Probably his goriest film, I want to say, actually, Legacy of Blood. I didn't watch Legacy of Horror. It's the same film, just with a bit more dialogue and a bit less blood. In fact, Legacy of Blood, 77 minutes. Legacy of Horror is 83 minutes, so it's 6 minutes extra, all apparently talking, and you know, it's if you've watched this, you've pretty much watched this, from my understanding. Quite why you'd want to make a TV cut of an Andy Milligan film is a little bit beyond me. Quite why you'd want to make this film at all is beyond me, because he'd already made it. And it doesn't change enough. It really doesn't. It's got the same Andy Milligan quality you would expect. It is rough around the edges. It adds nothing to the Ghastly Ones story. I didn't not enjoy it. There is a little bit more gore in Legacy of Blood than there is in the Ghastly Ones, but other than that, it's the same film, and it feels a little bit redundant spending time talking about it, to be absolutely honest. Special features, we've got Blood or Horror interview with executive producer Ken Lane. We've got a TV spot. We've got Legacy of Chris, an interview with Chris Broderick, who was an actor in, well, both of these films. Yeah, bizarre one, really bizarre. It feels like you put this on and you feel like you've already seen it, even though you haven't, because you've seen the Ghastly Ones. So yeah, that is Legacy of Blood and Legacy of Horror. Now we get to some juicy stuff. Now we get to his non-horror films in this set, other than Nightbirds. So there's technically 3 here, because one of the special features is a short film he made called Vapours. Quite a controversial film at the time. It was made in the mid-60s. It was, I mean, Andy Milligan was gay himself. It's a gay film, basically. It's set at a bathhouse, and it features a lot of homoerotic stuff going on. It's not explicit by any means, but at the time you can see why it was controversial. So there's that. I'll talk about that one now. Vapours, I get it. I can see why it's an important film. I won't watch it again, put it that way. It's only 30 minutes long. Interesting to see, but not really rewatchable for me. Then we have Fleshpot on 42nd Street. Maybe tied with the Ghastly Ones for his most famous film, if not just for that title. Absolutely fantastic title. And this is it's porn, basically. Well, it's got porn in it. It's got hardcore scenes in it. You see things going in places, which is exciting. But yeah, it's more of a drama than anything else. It's about this girl who's struggling to make her way in New York, and sort of, you know, she spends time with friends, she borrows money, she does favours for people, she sells herself essentially to anyone who's willing to give her money. And do you know something? I was going into this again thinking, oh, it's not really the film I bought this set for, but I'll watch it. And I came out thinking, you know what, that was absolutely fine. It was very gritty. It was really interesting to see the period shots of New York City. This was 1973. You get a lot of 42nd Street, you get a lot of grindhouse cinemas, you get a lot of... you very much get the feel of what it was like to be in New York at that time. Very gritty film. As I say as well, quite explicit. It does. Harry Reams is in this, who obviously went on to be a very big name in the adult industry. And yeah, it's funny, it's serious, it's upsetting in places, and it does its job really. Another thing that's noteworthy about Fleshpot on 42nd Street is that it features Richard Towers and Fred Lincoln, who the same year, I think, or was it the year before, did The Last House on the Left. Yeah, so Fred Lincoln was one of the villains in Last House on the Left, and Richard Towers was Mary's father, I believe. Yeah, both make appearances in this. Quite brief, but interesting all the same. I'm not even going to read all the taglines on this poster, because unless you can see them, there's quite a lot. 87 minutes. No special features on that one, which is unfortunate, because I thought there would be some. But interesting film, even if just to see New York in 1973. And then we get Seeds, which I believe actually Vinegar Syndrome released on a double bill with Vapours. But yeah, Seeds is a fucking experience. I mean, it's... What year was this? 1968, so it's the same year as the Ghastly Ones. It's black and white. It's probably his most hate-filled movie. It just oozes fucking hatred. It's so hard to describe. It says, sown in incest, harvested in hate. It's sort of like a family drama, really, but there's so much fucking death and shouting and screaming and blood. It's just a really unpleasant film. It's not one I'll probably revisit. As much as I found it interesting and entertaining when I first watched it, it sort of leaves you feeling, what the fuck was that? It's, yeah, really quite nasty. Some of the gore effects in it aren't particularly nice either. There's a bit with some acid, which I was kind of like, oh, you know, because obviously it's a black and white movie, you don't expect that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, if that sounds like your sort of thing, it's probably the pinnacle of the Andy Milligan appeal, where the film itself is technically very poor, but the atmosphere is so unique and appealing and interesting that it sort of leads you to keep watching. It's very much like that. It's not a film I enjoyed as such, but it's a film that it held my interest throughout it, and when it finished I was like, fuck, that was bold. So yeah, with this one that's 84 minutes, sorry. All we get with that one is a trailer. Again, a little bit unfortunate, but what can you do? The last two films in this set, 35 minutes, Jesus Christ. We have, these seem like they should be the other way around, because this is from 1984, this is from 1973, so it's a bit like a massive gap between them. But next one in the set is Carnage. This was it wasn't his last horror film, because he did like Surgical and Monstrosity after this. It's a haunted house story, really. It feels sort of, what is that Umberto Lenzi film from around the same time? It's a couple commit suicide in this house, and then another couple move in, and it's haunted, basically. It takes quite a lot of inspiration from things like The Evil Dead, you might say. It feels similar in tone to, if you've ever seen Norman J. Warren's Bloody New Year, it feels similar to that. It's very cheap, you can tell it's sort of straight-to-video affair, quite gory in places. It disappointed me, Carnage. Unfortunately, it's had so much potential. I thought Andy Milligan doing a haunted house film where, you know, he was always outlandish, he always wanted to do weird shit in his films, and I thought this is the perfect opportunity. And it just sort of left me feeling like it could have been better, which is a fair comment for any of these films, really. But do you know when you just feel like there's more potential than was used? That's kind of how I feel about Carnage. It was fine for what it was, but the end credits came up and I was like, oh, you know, it sort of wasn't as good as I was expecting it to be. I just keep saying to yourself, it's only a house, it's only a house, it's only a house. I mean, yeah, again, Last House on the Left ripoff. 92 minutes, so this is the longest film in this set. We get special features. The only thing is a trailer for the film Monstrosity. I watched that trailer. That looks like a fucking awful film, so sort of glad it's not in this set. Yeah, it's if you want to watch a haunted house film that's low budget, it'll tickle the right I don't know what I'm saying. It'll tickle the right spot, but might leave you feeling a bit sort of underwhelmed, is all I'm going to say. The last film in this set is Blood, and it leaves us on a high note. I really like this one. Yeah, this is, if someone said to me, what is a film that sums up what Andy Milligan is about, this is kind of the one I'd point to. It is a perfect display of the disjointed nature of his films. It is a perfect display of his outlandish characters, about the eccentric dialogue, about the gore. It's just, for me, if you want to watch a Milligan film, The Ghastly Ones is an interesting place to start, but if you want one that sort of encapsulates everything about Milligan, I'd say Blood is probably the one you want to see. This is about, well, real estate to some degree, but it's also a guy rents a house from an estate agent, and his wife is a vampire, and he has mutant people working for him and killer plants in the basement, and there's death and blood and all sorts going on. That's sort of like, yeah, it's Andy Milligan making a horror film. It's a shit title though, isn't it, Blood? Do you not think? Sickening horror to haunt your nightmares. A traditional gothic horror makes this film unsuitable for children, and some scenes may be disturbing to some members of the public. A spine chiller in dripping blood colour. Only 69 minutes this one, so it's one of the shorter films in the set, which I feel does help it. If it was padded out to feature-length runtime, I don't feel like it would be quite as effective, but as I say, in terms of the films in this set, Blood is up there with my favourites. The Body Beneath, Torture Dungeon, and The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here. They're probably my 4 picks from here. But it's lovely. I'm kind of glad it is this way, because I watched that one first, then ended on this one, and it sort of felt nice to finish on one of my favourite films of his, or what turned out to be one of my favourite films of his. So yeah, that's Blood. That's recommended from me. Now, the last disc, I'll be absolutely honest, I have not listened to. but this is just a CD of music by Hal Bosk, who was an actor who featured in a few of Milligan's films. He was in the Ghastly Ones, as pictured there. He was in Monstrosity, I think. He was in Torture Dungeon. He appeared in a few. Apparently also did some music as well, and that's what this is. Yeah, and there you've got, I think is it called the Bearded Ladies something or other? Bearded Lady Suite? I'll try and pull the disc out so I can see. All the discs, I will show one of the discs off because they're all pretty much the same. But it's another thing I don't like about these cases, is they're really awkward to pull the discs out. Bearded Lady's Wake, it's called. That's the CD disc there. And just pick a random page. I'll pull this one out. So yeah, the discs, there's 2 films per disc on most of them. And it comes as just a lot of people don't like this. I think it's fair enough, just as the 2 posters. Obviously you put the disc in and then the menu is sort of split down the middle, so you'll have The Body Beneath on one side and Nightbirds on the other. It sort of encapsulates Milligan really, because it is a little bit primitive the way this box set's designed, but I feel like that's intentional. You know, you've got sort of intentional creases and things put in to make it look weathered and a little bit naff almost, but it totally fits with the vibe of the set and the vibe of his films, so yeah, I can totally understand why they've done that. So that is the films. 40 fucking minutes. This ain't the most in-depth video, I'll be disappointed. And then we've got Venom, which is a book by Stephen Thrower, who I really, really enjoy reading because he's very, very insightful and educated on this sort of thing. Stephen Thrower and Severin Films present Andy Milligan's Venom in blood-dripping colour. So this is, it's not an autobiography as such. It's not in the same way that is it called the Ghastly One? There is a proper autobiography of Andy Milligan. This is more focused on his films, but it does touch on his lifetime around making the films. It focuses on a few of the actors and the people involved. Now, I'm going to get my criticism with this out of the way. It's advertised as 128 pages, but it isn't 128 pages. If you actually look in the back, not that you'll be able to see, a lot of it is film credits. So I'll quickly just give you an idea. I mean, there's some fantastic photos in here and adverts for the films, which obviously you wouldn't have otherwise seen, but there's a lot of this sort of thing which is interesting as reference material, but doesn't make for the most interesting reading. And there is a lot of it. I mean, it goes on for about 40-50 pages. So the actual book itself, where Stephen Thrower stops writing, is 77 pages. So that's what? 23 and 28. So it's 51 pages of footnotes. Again, interesting in its own way, but I don't feel, you know, I can sit and read Stephen Thrower's writing. I'm not going to sit and read this unless it's reference material and I need to see, you know, how long a film is, where it played, people involved. Yeah, I mean, interestingly as well, it does actually, I'll give it that it has the sort of showings of the films. So there, The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here. Theatrical release shows the theatres it played at, the dates it played. This is obviously too small for you to see. So it's interesting if you want to look at it, but I sort of got to page 77, flicked over and went, oh, that's where it ends. Which does go to some extent to show that the first 77 pages are actually really, really good. As you'd expect with Stephen Thrower, he's a very educated man when it comes to this sort of thing. It's very, very in-depth. As you can see, it's not, a lot of these books are sort of all pictures and no writing, but there is a decent chunk of writing throughout this, and it's in-depth for what it is. It's and it has, as I say, a lot of posters and things. It talks about his lost movies, stuff you probably wouldn't have otherwise seen. An interesting read, just not as long as I thought it was going to be, and I'm pretty sure a couple of other people have picked up on that as well. But yeah, if you've got the set, it's well worth a read. So I'm gonna pop this back in here. I do actually, these stickers, I'll keep them safe in the book until I find somewhere to put them. And that's it. That is the set. So yeah, £120 I paid for it. 14 movies. What does that work out at? Well, it's less than £10 a movie, isn't it? Plus you get obviously the lovely packaging. You get the booklet as well. As far as I'm aware, this is, I mean, it's good. I think it's decent value for money, because where else are you going to get these films? You know, it's not like they're ever going to get a better release than this, because I genuinely don't think they are. I think this is the set to go for if you're at least vaguely interested in Andy Milligan. The only thing I would say as I've said about a lot of the films in the set, they very much rely on you giving them space to do what they need to do. If you're going to sit there and expect something serious and gripping, then you are going to be disappointed. It's very much, if you're going to buy this set, you're going to have to go into the films with a certain level of understanding of what you're about to watch. On all levels, technically, they're very, very bad films. And I'd almost feel bad saying that because I did enjoy them, but it has to be said, they're not amazing when it comes to the actual quality of the movies. But as the back would suggest, they're very scuzzy, they're very gritty, they're very over the top, so unique. I really cannot think of another filmmaker like Andy Milligan. And it's lovely to see that he's finally got his own set, because I know a lot of, I mean, especially at the time, people absolutely ripped into Andy Milligan. You know, people said that Herschel Gordon-Lewis was streets ahead of Andy Milligan, and if you've ever seen a Herschel Gordon-Lewis movie, you know that they're not exactly top tier either. But as I say, I'm so glad to own this box set. It was such a delight to work through it, you know, reading along as I was watching the films. And yeah, there's a lot of films in here that I'll be revisiting. That's all, again, all your films on the back there. Really enjoyed it. And if I'm not going to recommend it, I'm really not, because unless you think you're going to like it, you're probably not going to like it. You know, I often show people movies that I enjoy that I know aren't great. I don't think I'd ever show someone an Andy Milligan film unless they really wanted to see something special. That's the sort of films that they are. But yeah, if you think you're going to like them, you're probably going to like them. If you don't think you're going to like them, you're not going to like them. That's pretty much as you can say. The set itself, though, absolutely great. So glad I own it. Really, really decent value for the money, I think. And yeah, it sits on the shelf as one of my pride and joys, I think. I did not expect that to go on for as long as it did, but I think I did it in one take as well. What a talent I am. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you've got the set, what you think of the films, if you've seen them. Really interested to hear people's thoughts on Andy Milligan, because he's a very polarising figure, so I'm interested to hear what you think. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you again very soon, maybe for a live stream of more of my movies. But until then, thank you very much for your time, and see you later.
It's very good.